kind of the way the planet's going. But it's great to meet you. I love your creative spirit and energy, so thank you for taking a minute out.
You are so welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, you bet. And so one of the things that really kind of was a part of the tapestry of our world, especially in a creative way, so to speak, was living through this pandemic.
You.
How did you get through the pandemic, and how did it ultimately change the way that you see and proceed in life now?
Oh, okay. Well, those are two separate questions.
Yeah.
And I'll answer the first one. How did I get through the pandemic? Here's what I came to realize. Uh, we are fortunate, very fortunate living where we are in Maine, as it's not one of the most highly populated states in the country. So we were not dealing with the same level of anxiety, agony, and panic that was very much present in a lot of highly urbanized places.
Yeah.
So I will say that I was fortunate in that regard. Um, I think I'm also fortunate because I'm an introvert. And from the introverts that I talk to and the extroverts that I talk to, the introverts were not having quite as tough a time being deprived of our social circles, our in-person gatherings. Um, Extroverts, on the other hand, were in pain. And I'm married to one, and he was scrambling. He was lonely. Um, and there's only so much that he can rely on me for conversational stimulation, especially since I undertook the writing of my book over the pandemic. I thought, okay, it's taking away a lot of things, but it's also providing me, probably for the first time in my adult life, with a span of unstructured time. And once we came to understand that this was not going to go away in 3 weeks, um, I thought, well, it's now or never. I've always wanted to write a book, and I think this is my opportunity. So, taking action, having a consistent creative activity that kept me going, um, was pretty huge. And I would take breaks and I would find other kind of strange creative activities. Um, there is a area, I'm a gardener, and there is an area around a lilac bush that would not grow anything, no matter how hard I tried. So I created what I call a smash garden. A smash garden consisted of these remnants of broken pottery that I'd saved because even the remnants were pretty. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And suddenly I thought, okay, I'm gonna use it as mulch, all this prettiness. And that's what I did. I
Yeah.
put it around the base of the lilac bush. Plus, I had something I could do with all my mother's old dishes that somehow came to me after her death. So,
What a great idea. Because it happens all the time. There's always remnants of things that you thought were cool. And it's such a waste to throw the whole thing away. 10%, 20% gets chipped off, and you're like, oh, it's gone. But no, it can be made into something that highlights the lilacs. So I get it. Yeah,
yeah.
it's great. So give me a preview of your book.
Okay. Well, I have it right here. This is Head, Heart, and Hands Listening in Coach Practice. I am a coach and have been for some time. Uh, and I decided to focus on listening because when I entered into Seth Godin's project, Writing in Community, which is how I fashioned my book, um, someone suggested that you write, I was coursing around for a topic. Somebody suggested that you write a book based on workshops that you've already taught. And I had held quite a few workshops on this model that I developed for adult listeners. It's actually based on the Waldorf principle of early childhood education, of head, heart, and hands learning. So I started to get curious about how we listen, what we listen for, what we miss, why you and I can listen to the same conversation and come away with completely different things. I started to get curious about that. Plus, I also, this whole model was sparked by some work that I had done for the Department of Environmental Protection. I had a series of trainings with field operators whose primary job is to go and hold conversations with landowners who are doing something or have done something or are planning to do something that's in violation of some environmental code. So you can imagine the emotional tenor of
Yeah.
these conversations, right? Not friendly. In fact, outright hostility was present. So they brought me in to do communications training with their field operators to see if we could make these conversations more effective. And so what I started to realize is that these highly skilled, data saturated employees were listening for opportunities to share this huge amount of information in order to change the landowner's mind. Well, I think we know now how well information changes minds. Next to nothing. So I started to try to flip it around. It's like, can I get you to listen for something else? Can I get you to listen for opportunities to build relationship, to build alliance? Can I get you to tease out the underlying dream that the landowner is trying to build? And then you can position yourself as an ally with your data and your information to help him build that dream.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be sexist about it, but almost 99.999% of these conversations were with male landowners.
Yeah.
So once we started focusing on that, things started to get interesting. People spoke up in these groups that hadn't been speaking up for the first time, like middle-aged women who, by necessity, have had to learn a high degree of heart listening. Heart listening means listening beneath the content, listening to the messages that are going on facially, physically, tone of voice. What are those messages saying? Are they congruent? Do they match the content of what's being said? So all these ways into a conversation that we don't habitually think about, but that will give us very interesting information in order to build a much more effective interaction. So I started to build this model. I started to get curious about my own listening. And a big part of the book, a big part of the research that I did had to do with our own assumptions and biases going into conversations, including my own. I assumed, since I'm an empathic listener, since I'm a coach, that I would score very highly in my own assessment on heart listening. But in fact, that was not the case. And what taught me that were some painful lessons by my teenage daughter. Skylar was going through kind of the classic sucky adolescence, right? With all the everything that implies. We've been through it, so we probably all know what that means. We would hold family dinners on the deck. She would cry. We'd hold her hand. This went on for weeks, I want to say. And I started to notice in myself a degree of impatience, a degree of, well, what are we going to do about it? To which she would reply, "Mom, I just need you to listen." I was like, huh, okay, that's interesting information. And so it turns out that in the head, heart, and hands model, I'm really more of a hands listening specialist. Hands listening is a little more nuanced and a bit harder to describe and understand. But when we go back to defining and getting curious about what we listen for, I am listening, and hands listeners in general are listening for problems to solve. We're listening for ways to work around an issue. We're listening to build bridges between the data and information that head listening provides and the empathy and relationship that heart building provides. We're looking to bridge those two capacities. So, in asking, what are we going to do about it? That is a classic hands listening question. So, that's sort of the long answer on
Yeah.
that.
No, and I'm glad. That's great. That gives me that kind of answers a lot of little questions in between. But at the end of the day, if I put you in front of a bunch of third grade students and it's career day, and one of them wanted to know right now in 2024 what you do on a daily basis for a living, how would you
Yeah.
answer them?
I coach people, particularly people who are struggling with transitions of many kinds, mostly professional,
Yeah.
newly promoted women in particular who are suddenly having to step into the spotlight, suddenly having to erect a professional presence in a completely different way. Entrepreneurs who want to build their dream, but are still having to spend 40 hours a week working in their day job. People who are trying to infuse more creativity into their work lives, into their professional lives. Um, so, transition coaching. I also do and got certified in 2 years ago. And this was something else I undertook during the pandemic. Um, Mindset coaching, positive intelligence, Shirzad Shamim's amazing model. Mindset coaching is all about discovering which saboteurs are getting in our way. And so part of my book embraces the positive intelligence model as well. There are certain saboteurs that undermine uh, certain listening modalities. As a hands listener, one of my primary saboteurs is restless, easily distractible,
Yeah.
right? New shiny thing, um, which afflicts a lot of us in this culture, due primarily to social media.
Yeah.
Again, that's probably too wordy an explanation for third graders, but that's what I do.
No, I think you did good in explaining in the beginning and then segueing into the rest of us that had questions. So, when you were in the third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream?
I wanted to be an astronomer.
Okay.
I wanted to be an astronomer based mostly on the amazing photos that were coming through on galaxies and stars and planets. I just couldn't imagine anything more amazing.
Yeah.
But my sixth grade teacher, after, I had done maybe my eighth book report on the wonder of the universe, etc., my sixth grade teacher plunked a giant math text in front of me. And she said, "This is what it takes to be an astronomer." My heart sunk. I was struggling with division and multiplication. I was never going to wrap my mind around algebra and astrophysics. I will never forget the day that text plunked on my desk. It
Wow.
was it was sobering.
Wow. So, who's been a hero for you? Who's been somebody that has been an inspiration on your path in life?
Well, there are many, many, many of them. on my path in life, uh, a music teacher when I was in 8th grade, Miss Fitzgerald, who really encouraged me to step out of the shadows, 8th grade, middle school, ugh, all the way around.
Yeah.
She encouraged me to step out of the shadows, practice my piano, do some composing on my own. She got me in as the pianist for our middle school chorus. She said, if you really work hard, you can do really well at this. And so I did. I did work hard and I did do well at it. Um, but I also discovered that I really didn't want to spend 3 hours a day practicing scales and chords and, all of that, much as I loved music. So I would say she was my first inspiration for me to kind of step out of my own shadow. Uh, I find huge inspiration in the late, great David LaGraff, who I want to say was a Zen improvisation teacher who likewise encouraged me to step out again of my own shadow, this time imposed as an adult, into the wonderful world of improvisation, which was extremely terrifying at the time, but not anymore.
Yeah.
Um, right. And also, of course, Brene Brown,
Yeah.
her focus on vulnerability, uh, just the effectiveness of her heartful authenticity, her amazing storytelling. Uh, I love her. I love the way she writes. I love the way she speaks. I just love her as a human being,
Yeah.
um, in all of who she is. So those are the three that come to mind.
So you, as a coach, you have to guide your clients in the right direction, giving good life advice, so to speak. But for you, what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Well, I will answer that question, but first I want to go back to what you said. I think the assumption is that coaches give advice, and I think that's a universal assumption.
Sure.
Uh, but what coaches really do is listen to help through questioning the wisdom that already lies inside our clients.
Yeah.
That I'm not imposing whatever I think is best for you, Joe.
Yeah.
I'm teasing out what you believe would be best for yourself. I'm allowing you and nurturing your own ability to trust that voice rather than mine, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. That I was trying to be careful about the way I question that because I've heard that before, that
Yeah,
it's the coaches aren't there to give advice. But I
right.
guess I was kind of trying to frame it as kind of helping people like what you're saying rely
Eh,
on what they already know, their wellspring inside.
right. And to complement what I just said, until I get a sense of what that person really wants to pursue and what their goals are, I'm not going to give advice. But once I do, I've got plenty of resources, plenty of connections that I can help them make, plenty of ways to guide them along the path. I don't consider myself an expert per se, but I do consider myself to be a curious and resourceful guide along the path.
So, what is your motivation every day to wake up to do this work? You have to give a lot of yourself to help others, but you also have to retain enough to evolve as a human. What is that collective gumption for you?
Ooh, what's that collective gumption for me? What gets me out of bed? I think it helps that since becoming a parent, I'm a morning person. Uh, I'm also uh, blessed with, for the most part, being able to sleep really well. I wasn't always, but I am now. And so when I rise and shine in the morning, Um, I can I find inspiration in knowing that I can look forward to at least one thing on my to-do list. And if I'm in the midst of a particularly tricky span of time, I make sure that I build those things into my to-do list. So, for instance, right now I'm working on recreating my website. This is pretty tedious. Uh, there's a lot of back and forth with my web person. This is not, for me, fun and interesting. But I know that if I build breaks where I can just go for a walk around the block, we live close by a little dog park, go hang out with other people's puppies for a bit. Um, I can look forward to that if nothing else.
Yeah.
I also rely on a certain morning ritual that no matter what I'm headed for during the day, will position me and my mindset in a way that will allow me to take full advantage of whatever opportunities come my way.
Yeah. So, of all of the things that you've done and accomplished and become in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Um, yeah, thank you for asking that question. Well, yeah, I think I'm going to have to answer with two things.
Yeah.
Most parents will understand my first answer, which is I'm most proudest of my daughter. She overcame obstacles that many, many kids would collapse under, but she did not collapse. And she graduated college last year. She is making extremely solid money with a job she loves. This was 6 months out of graduation. So she is one of the, I want to say lucky few, but she has worked extremely hard. She's very smart, very capable, and she's managed to keep her wonderful sense of humor along the way. So that's first.
Yes.
Second, mm, well, I would say that I'm most proud of this book.
Yeah.
It won a National Book Award at the end of last year. It's also being used, and this tickles me no end. My book is being used as a resource and a textbook for the Olympia Snow Institute for Women's Leadership.
Wow.
So that is perhaps maybe the highest compliment that anyone could give me.
That's wonderful. So at the end of the day, in all of these lights that people see you in, family, friends, readers, clients, you run the show though. What's your
Mm.
perception of you? They all have a perception, but as you driving the bus, what is that perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Ooh, wow, Joe, I could have used a little time with this prior to
This,
actually being recorded. What do I think of me? Hmm. I would say that one of my strengths is deep curiosity and openness to new opportunities. Sometimes these factors get me into trouble, but it also keeps me out of going down the judgment pathway where I'm going to prejudge a situation before I step into it. I mean, yeah, you have to ask a few questions going in. Um, do you want an example of that?
sure.
Okay. Um, During the pandemic, at the same time that I had finally landed on a topic for my book. I had earlier in the year taken an online course for women to develop online products. I took this course because years ago I had created a card deck called Shift POV to guide small groups families, professional groups, whatever, through a decision-making process where there were strong opinions on many sides. So I thought maybe I could put Shift POV online. Well, it turns out that I got a different idea. Once we had all been, communicating via Zoom, having to conduct business via Zoom, I'm having to facilitate meetings on Zoom. I just thought, I think there's something frustrating in this experience. I'm hearing it from other people, and I'm experiencing it myself. And so the guy who put together this class for women in creating online products was very interested in my problem, which is how we can make Zoom meetings more efficient and less distracting. So I got through the class. Other people had developed products. I had no product. All I had was this question. Well, he proceeded through that summer to keep asking me when I was going to come back for round 2. And I thought, oh, great, they need butts in the seats. I don't even need to be. I'm not even going to answer this. Well, he started texting me. He started calling me on the phone. I was like, Nick, back off. I feel like I'm being stalked. But then we had a conversation. He said, I want to help you develop a product that goes to the heart of your question. So push comes to shove, and we developed something called Nugget, which was a way to take notes instantly in online meetings so that we don't have to distract ourselves by typing up or writing down notes or spending hours going through videos to try to tease out the juicy bits.
Yeah.
Nugget allows you to press a button and boom, the whole thing that thought is highlighted on the transcript.
Yeah.
So we were able to sell it for a really nice price. I was able to give my daughter some work as our social media maven. But saying yes to things sometimes comes after coursing through a number of no's.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to pick up your award-winning book, hire you, learn more about you, any of the good business, where can they go?
Kym Dakin, KYMDAKIN.com.
Okay. It's easy. Kym, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story, for your passion. Keep doing the great work.
Thank you, Joe. You too.
Yes.
This is a pleasure.
Thank you.